So New York City. We have lived in the third largest city in the United States. We now live in the first largest city in the United States. We lived in Chicago, New York. You've lived in LA. I've lived in the Bay Area. I've lived in Boston.
Chicago's second biggest city?
Third biggest. Did I say second?
No, you said third, but is it second?
It's third.
Oh, LA second.
LA second. New York's the first. Tell me your thoughts on everywhere you've lived. Where should we live? What is New York City like? What is Chicago like? What is LA like?
Okay, we just talked about the...
We didn't talk about the cities.
No, I'm talking about, we just talked about the subway TikTok. No, we're talking about...
There's a reason I'm doing that.
That's great.
But that's
Let's go.
I knew as soon as you're ruining my cold open, but as soon as we do New York City stuff, it's going to blow up and city stuff.
I agree.
We're going to be infinite TikToks from this.
I agree.
What are your thoughts on New York City?
I think background is important. I think it's fantastic that you and I both lived in Chicago.
Yeah.
We went to school in a relatively rural place, and now we're in New York. Okay. That's like the underlying out of context thing that for our extended viewers, they understand. I think that New York is the type of place that you have to live in at least once before you die. I think that's like a statement. If you are an American or if you plan to live in the United States long term and you are 20 plus post college, I think you should live in New York at least once. Why? Because it immediately tells you, because you're thrown in the deep end of the biggest city in America, whether you like cities or not. This past weekend, I met a bunch of people at a birthday party. Many of them loved New York, objectively loved New York. And I was kind of in my like grumpy phase of the day where I was kind of just like, whatever. They came up to me and I was like, this kind of feels lame. I don't really like New York. Going to that negative Nancy route. And they're like, oh, we love New York. And I asked them, why do you love New York? And their point was, all our favorite people are here. And I was instantly like, that's such a, like, so I asked them, if all your people moved to a rural part of the United States, random rural part, would you be happy? And they're like, no, not necessarily, but there's a reason why they're here. Yeah. And I was like, okay, sure. So you guys like I was being sarcastic. So you guys like the, like, sewage smell and like the rats and whatever. And they're like, yeah, those things suck, but all our people are here. And like, we could do things like this where we group everyone for a birthday party and 30 people show up. We can't do that everywhere else. So it's kind of the circular problem of like, it's not necessarily that New York itself is what they like, but New York is what's getting these people together. Yeah. If it wasn't for New York, they wouldn't be there. Yeah. We have the same exact kind of thing. Maybe not at that scale because we went to a Southern school, but I think that's kind of the thing that's having us here, plus the opportunity or whatever. And I felt it over the past 2 years. There's events in the NFT or startup world that I wouldn't have been able to attend to if I wasn't in New York, because it's in New York. There's people that we've met up with and they happen to be in New York, so we're in New York. So it's a circular problem of like, yeah, we could go down in history and wonder why had it been New York, why isn't New York now? But reality is for many people, the answer is we like who is here, therefore we are here. And for that reflectiveness, I'm sure the people that they like being here, they will also say, we like that other person that's here. Perhaps that's why we're here. I do know a few selection of folks that really do like the fast-paced lifestyle. They like the New York City subway, like for real. They like bagels and they like pizza. They like Central Park. They like being able to go through the 5 boroughs. They like going to Soho. They like constantly having something to do. They like going to 4 a.m. nights and seeing everybody and seeing lights and having it not shut down. Those things are objectively parts of New York that's exclusive to New York. But for me, to conclude my long spree, those aren't things that's keeping me here. I could care less for those things.
So what's keeping you in New York City?
It's the cliche answer. I think it's the I need to live here at some point, and I'm already living here, and I want to live here before I get too old. FOMO. Plus, you're here. My girlfriend's here. My church is here. A lot of my college friends are here. My old town friends are here. Ironically.
Bless you.
I like getting sick in cold weather. It's the people. It's really the people.
It's the people. I mean, New York City, it's a special place. It's energetic. There's people. There's things to do, whether that's bars, shows. I run through Central Park almost daily. And also, it feels like you're in a movie.
It does.
And that's because so many movies are filmed here, especially right now. It's December. It's holiday seasons. I walk up Fifth Avenue, you see the Saks Light Show. I don't know what else there is. The Rockefeller Tree. Like, especially on the holidays, you feel like you're in a movie because so many movies have been filmed here. Then, yeah, I've run into countless celebrities. You run into celebrities. People congregate through New York. They flow through New York. It's also disgusting. I just saw a FedEx mailman pee on the way here. I'm not even joking. Pee in a corner. And I get it because there's no public bathrooms. There probably should be public bathrooms in New York City. I don't know why we still don't have public bathrooms. It's probably a bigger problem than I can think about. But yeah, New York City, it's a energetic, chaotic, special place. I hope it's not forever for me. It's at least been a couple of years and a couple of years more. It's different.
Here's also the other view. Let's say that the United States is a giant high school or college.
Sure.
And New York City is the main common area where everyone at some point hangs out in or goes through, and is like where the cool kids and even just every kid in general hangs out with. But let's say this common area just happens to have like trash cans outside and just too many people, so there's rats or whatever. That's another beautiful part of New York City that I love, as in there's always people coming in and coming out of New York City. And I love being the host for those people. And I love being able to just run into them because they happen to be stopping by.
Right.
There's no other city like that. Again, in circular argument of like, yeah, because everyone's here.
Yeah.
But I think because New York is such a central hub, it's a very touristy area. Everyone wants to come at some point, and we are here, so people are visiting. It's a very convenient, common area to see everyone. Right. There's no other city that you could check off so many boxes all at once. Right. Like a single person that either went to some school somewhere else, is from somewhere else, and then have roots elsewhere, and then have a company elsewhere, can come in once and see a couple of their coworkers, a couple of their high school alumni, a couple of their college alumni, all in one visit, which is why it's such a worthwhile trip if there was a cost per person met ratio.
Right. It's also just so many walks of life. Like you can be in the New York City subway and you see a mom with her 2 kids. You'll see a hedge fund manager to her left and a low-wage employer to her right.
Yes.
Like you can't escape other walks of life. Like I'm in tech, but I see artists a lot. You'll see people that are clearly like making art, doing graffiti, walking past the art schools in New York. I'll see, I don't know what else is the artist. Finance people, of course. Sure. I walked past, like, I guess Colgate has a big office here. I just walked past them. You just see so many different walks of life, so many different people. It also changes you. And it makes you so numb to so many different things in life. I was in Las Vegas early this year, and just walking past, and Las Vegas is obviously very, very, very touristy, especially around the main strip. A lot of tourists in Las Vegas, but I was with another guy from New York. And we were just walking down the strip. And for us, it's just like you go, you walk, especially in Vegas because there's so many tourists. Everyone's trying to get money from the tourists, ask for money, trying to hand out flyers and coupons. And all the tourists are like grabbing them, bright-eyed, can't pay attention to where they're going. Me and this New York guy is like, we're literally like, oh, this is so dumb. How are people falling for that? How people pay attention? We're just walking because there's so many people, so congested. You just have to go about your day. You have to ignore the other people. It just makes you numb to certain things, whether that's good or bad. Like you walk down, you're not seeing some really awful things around you. You're not probably also ignoring beauty as well too. Like I feel like I don't notice beautiful buildings as much as I wish I had. The Empire State Building, that's not an example of a beautiful building. Oh, it's beautiful in its own right. I barely notice it anymore. I barely notice like the Chrysler Building, which I walked by on the way here. It definitely changes you. How do you feel like New York changed you?
I wanted to hone in on the word numbness for a bit, where a lot of people around me, especially when I complain about New York, they're like, you get to live in New York. Like my parents say that a lot. Like you have the privilege of living in New York. I'm so happy vicariously through you. Like I think it's such a cool thing to be. I have a lot of friends who are like, dude, Brian lives in New York. Like that's still a thing, even amidst my social circle, especially those that stuck around in California. I think I'm so numb to that. Like I don't think I like even recognize. I should be more grateful of like what is available here, all the way from the accessibility to the transportation measures that other cities might not benefit from, and also just the people that are constantly around that we take for granted. Like even our past weekend, we had a friend who actually he's been public on my channel before, so I can say it. Like Andrew visited us, and not even necessarily us. I don't think he came for you and me.
Yeah.
But he had his family here. Yeah. He had us here. Yeah. He had other Washington Lee friends here.
Yeah.
He had probably work friends here.
Yeah.
He had friends from other places here, and because he made that subconscious calculation of like, if I go there, I'm gonna meet at least 5 people, and those people happen to be there, so I get to be there. That has happened to me across family, high school, California, whatever. Mm-hmm. And all of that I'm still I am at this point very numb to. Right. Because it happens every other week.
I'm going to miss that too. We're not I get to see so many friends and keep relationships with so many people because they do filter through.
For sure.
Everyone wants to visit New York, at least at some point.
But that's the danger though. I think that a lot of people are so wrapped in that, they forget to take a step back and reprioritize, because you can't have that forever. I think you can actually, but I think there's stages of life personally that you need to move on from such things and perhaps start a family or commit to a wife or husband beyond just being so caught up in meeting new people or having people that run into town stay with you or have time with you. I think that's the New York trap that a lot of people fall to when they go into their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're so addicted to that lifestyle. Right. They become so numb to it that they're filling their gaps and their feeling of emptiness constantly with week after week of not even just partying, but like it could be board games, it could be hanging out, it could be people that are just happening to come into New York, where I think they don't move on from that 20s mindset.
Right, just walking around, there's so much stimulus that is so hard to get in very, very few cities in the world. I have never been to LA. Ooh. How would you've lived in LA.
I have.
You grew up outside LA.
Right outside.
How would what's LA like? And then what's LA versus New York City? I'll probably phrase that question again for TikTok. What's LA like?
I think the LA essence is from the outside, Hollywood, influencer, beach, or whatever. I think the best way to describe LA is that it's not a walkable city. Things are so spread out. In some ways, I don't even think it feels like a city. If you ask someone, where is DTLA? That's how they refer to downtown LA for LA folks. There is a specific part where I'm imagining, where most people from LA are imagining to be downtown LA. But it's not like New York where you walk around, you can be dropped off somewhere and explore all of LA in a walkable setting. There's various parts of what people, I think, imagine Southern California to be. I'll just use that term of like, there's Beverly Hills, and then there's downtown LA, and then there's like Chinatown, and there's where LAX, where you land, and there's Orange County, there's San Diego, all these different parts of the greater Southern Californian area where you could visit via car. And I've probably set a very expanded list, but I think the issue or difference between LA is that because it's not walkable like New York or even Chicago, it doesn't feel unified as one Los Angeles unit. And I think that does directly lead to how the city works culturally. I think it's very hard to just run into people unless you were maybe at like a famous restaurant.
Right. I
think the literal idea of running into or being able to collaborate or like rustle up with people that are typically not in your social or economic circle is a very New York unique thing.
I ran into, not the same thing, but a coworker in my neighborhood. I feel like the longer I've been in New York, the more days, like if a week goes by without running into someone, it's been a weird week. I feel like. That makes so much sense. So how would you compare it to New York City then, outside of just how's the culture like?
Ooh. So I can't speak for certain because I didn't really live in downtown LA.
Yeah.
But knowing my LA friends, I think a lot of them do a lot of like house planning, house party planning, because their houses are obviously bigger and more spacious and cheaper relatively than New York. That directly leads to it. I think there's definitely a less mixing of groups. Obviously, New York is no certain like beautiful. Bad day for podcast. New York is not like a perfect melting pot either. I think we're still some form of
absolutely
working towards beautiful utopia, but I think LA is far more cornered into their direct niches or groups because there really is no opportunity to run into people. You could go to a bar, but I think even the bars are pretty demographically divided. Same with New York to a certain degree, but I think New York, at least you get to ride that subway together, like you said, go to these like pizza joints. I've seen plenty of people, just based on looks, look very different, but they're all at those like delis or whatever, eat there. There's a reason why I think New York is almost deli exclusive, because LA doesn't really have that kind of thing based on what I've seen. They have good restaurants.
Like bodegas, you mean?
Yeah, bodegas.
Okay.
I don't think those exist because people aren't walking around and then all of a sudden hungry.
Because they go out with the intention of eating. Like they're driving to place. Probably more drive-thrus too.
Oh, tons.
And it's sunny. It's so different. Some like the weather's obviously different. How you get around is different. I'm sure the neighborhoods are a lot more like. Yeah, now there's probably not as much social economic diversity in your neighborhood, but you just still see it within New York City because everyone uses the same subway system. You see it all in the same subway because they basically go north, south, east, west based on which subway you're looking at.
Here's also, I think, the additional part of, I think when you live in LA, you for sure probably have a car, right? Because you have to go to work or you travel around, which means that you have access to Palm Springs, which is 2 hours away in a nice resort area. You can go to Beverly Hills. You can go to Orange County. You can go to San Diego. You can even go to Vegas for 4 hours. You could travel up to San Francisco for 8 hours. Yeah. If you live in New York, even the depths of like Flushing or downtown Brooklyn or even Jersey are all subwayable, right? So one, you don't have a car to begin with because most New Yorkers don't have a car. But two, there's access to other places that give you different experiences through public transportation. So I think there's a difference in the types of activities you're able to do if you're an LA person versus you're a New York person.
It's all relatively different in New York, and now I'm switching. Hot take, I think we both believe, there's actually not a lot to do in New York.
I can't agree more. I think there's there's so much to do in New York, but there's nothing to do in New York. I think if I look back at my 2 years at New York, and then I think about my, 4 years in Lexington or like 10, 15 years in Southern California. Of course, I was in different age groups and different earning potentials at these different times in my life, but I could summarize my time in New York to eating, drinking, talking, or talking while eating and drinking.
Right.
And I'm made to believe that even if you are ultra rich, you just do better drinking, better eating, and like talking with, depending on what your definition of cool is, cooler people at higher social circles.
Right.
There's not much more you can do. Like people aren't going hiking every weekend in New York.
There's no beach. There's no lake. There's no hiking.
There's no golf range.
There's no golfing.
Inside. Like there's no literal diversity of what you could do.
And it's all more expensive too. Like, yes, you could do like an escape room or video games or join a gym and play pickup games. And that could, I guess, be cheap, like soccer leagues. But for the most part, anything socially, it's not, I know, like, no one's like, oh, hey, do you want to go on a walk on this trail with me? Like, no. There's no trail to go on a walk on this West Side Highway. But it's, oh, let's grab dinner, let's grab a drink. That's the default activity. Like, let's go do something. Let's get a coffee. Let's get a bagel. And then you switch it up by going to Central Park, and you still smell piss and vomit constantly.
Facts.
Central Park, I don't know why Central Park's vomit has gotten so much worse the past 6 months. And I've been running it weekly, multiple times a week. I don't know why this is. I run on these trails, and I swear I smell vomit so much. I don't know if it's changed. I don't know if it's me, but I don't know what that's about.
The same way that Scientific American responded to my TikTok about why it's raining only on Saturdays consecutively. If you're watching, please let us know.
Scientific American, why is my subjective experience in Central Park worse off that I'm smelling vomit a lot? Maybe there's more races right now, people vomiting after races. Anywhere. And I used to, I have to get through like the fringes, like all outside, like it obviously smells like piss and garbage like most of New York. But once I got in, usually I had like some level of nature smell. I still get hit with vomit waves, and it's been in random areas, like trails in the middle, and like it's pretty big. So like the trails in the middle, yes, they're accessible, but also like you have to be pretty deep in the park at that point. But also the trails on the outside, the paths. I don't know why. Yeah, that's my complaint of the day. But that's what you get in New York. That's living in New York. It's not perfect. It's not even ideal. It's not even easy. That's part of the beauty too.
It's very difficult, I would say.
It's so difficult.
I think living in New York is very, very difficult.
It's expensive. It's dirty. But also, I tried to move to Boston quite a few times in my life, and I have lived in Cambridge, Mass. at one point. That's a very expensive city too. It's a top 10 expensive city in the United States. New York's obviously the most expensive city in the United States. With New York, I get where that value is coming from. I get what I'm paying for. I am paying a shit ton for a box in one of the most unsexy neighborhoods in New York City. But I get what I get, like the value I get of that rent. I get, and the taxes that come away from my paycheck, I understand. I walk out my door and I see everything I could possibly imagine. It's energetic. I feel it. I have some of the best food in the world, some of the best drink in the world. I have really interesting friends I run into, really interesting people I go on dates with, really interesting runs I go in. And we just said you can't, like, it's all the same. You can do anything, which is weird. Like, I still believe that too. Like, it's limited and it's not limited in the social activities and it's not diverse, but it is very diverse. And it's this weird city of contradictions when it comes to that as well, too. And that's also, I think, part of the beauty of New York.
I think the access part isn't highlighted enough, where I would say, for me, church is the neutralizer, where the only commonality between these people that I go to church with are either they're Korean or they're Christian or both, right? And because of that, it brings even a more diverse array of people, where, yes, we could say New York is a melting pot or whatever all we want, but realistically, you're still grouped by the social circles you're part of. Right. For you, it's work, for school or whatever.
Yeah.
At this church and the small groups that I'm in, now for 2 consecutive years, I'm part of a small group where no 2 people have the same job. And I think that's relatively unique to New York because so many different industries are relatively prominent here. I'm talking across like music to tech to startup to finance. I've met chefs. I've met people who are in design. I've met people that are fashionistas. I've met people who are unemployed but they want to be in New York. Like such a wide range of people that you wouldn't meet elsewhere, at least not collectively.
How many cities do people move to without a job and stay unemployed just to be there besides New York?
I feel like I'm just speaking out of my butt with no stats, but I bet the New York proportion of that is extremely high because there's a romanticized view of New York that no other city has. I bet actually that percentage might be higher for LA because I think a lot of people that are focusing on entertainment is probably going there with no work and they're trying their hardest. But I have met a unwarranted amount of people in New York who have remained unemployed because they want to stay in New York for whatever reason that may be, or they're rich enough to stay in New York without having a job. Power be to them. I bet the proportion is extremely higher.
There's a lot of wealth too. You hear
so much wealth.
Just crazy stories of people like with the parents of like penthouses apartment. They're paying for their apartments. They're paying for their rent. Just subsidizing their entire lifestyle, which is crazy and obscene. And you'll see that as well too. And you see everything. There's no more point to that. New York versus Chicago. Our last comparison here. We lived in Chicago together. I was born in Chicago. Shout out Chi-Town. Chicago's very different in that it feels like a Midwestern city. It's a big city, like 2.7 million. I want to say maybe it's 2.3 million. Historically, I shouldn't say millions in this podcast, but I'm a lot better about the population.
Mike is right.
In the United States, I'm very good about population for the most part. It's 2 million, third biggest city in the United States. Beautiful architecture, but it's let's say it's a third of the size in New York City. But it's not just a third of the energy. Maybe it's like a tenth of the energy. Hundredth of the energy. And it's so interesting. There's something about like even Chicago or like Boston or even London for that matter, which is a very big city.
Huge city.
Not the energy of New York City. Chicago's low, slower paced, Midwest lifestyle, beauty, very cheap